I have one message from your person, and it is very urgent. Take a slow breath before you continue, because this message was not sent lightly. It came through silence, through distance, through unspoken regret, and it is reaching you now because time really matters. Hey everyone, welcome to Psych Lens. Do not forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and select all. This is because every video has the power to shift your mindset, sometimes in ways you do not expect. Your person has been holding something inside for a very long time, longer than they want to admit, and longer than you probably realize. They did not wake up one morning and forget you. They did not suddenly stop caring about you. They did not move on the way they pretended to. What they actually did was bury emotions they did not know how to face. And buried emotions do not just disappear, they wait. They build up pressure, and eventually they break through. This message comes from a place of panic, not a place of confidence. Your person is not calm right now. They are not at peace. They are unsettled mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Something has shifted recently. Maybe they saw something that reminded them of you. Maybe they heard your name spoken casually by someone else. Maybe life slowed down just enough for the noise to stop and the truth to get loud. Whatever it was, it shook them awake. They are realizing something that scares them deeply. They may lose you forever. And this realization did not come gently. It hit them late at night when distraction stopped working. It hit when scrolling felt empty. It hit when laughter with other people felt forced. It hit when silence crept in and asked questions they could no longer avoid. They noticed something that hurt. No one else feels like you, not in the way you listened, not in the way you understood without asking a million questions, not in the way your presence felt safe without being suffocating. That is when the urgency began. Because urgency does not come from love alone. It comes from the fear of loss that cannot be fixed. If your person could speak without fear, without pride, and without ego, this is what they would say: I should have acted sooner. I thought I had more time. I did not think you would pull away like this. I did not realize silence could hurt you so deeply. They are finally understanding something painful. Doing nothing is still a choice. And that choice cost them closeness with you. They regret not showing up when it mattered. They regret not choosing words when you needed reassurance. They regret not choosing courage when honesty was required. At the time, silence felt safer. Distance felt controlled. Avoidance felt like strength. But avoidance always has consequences. Your person struggles with emotional expression, not because they do not feel, but because they feel too much and do not know how to process it safely. Opening up meant risking rejection. Vulnerability meant losing control. Admitting the depth of their feelings meant confronting parts of themselves they were not ready to face. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Your person lived that truth without realizing it. Instead of facing their emotions, they let them operate in the background. They let fear make decisions. They let pride speak for them. They let silence do the talking. And now those unconscious choices have surfaced into consequences they cannot ignore. They feel you changing. This is important. Your person senses that you are not the same anymore. Your energy has shifted. Your reactions are different. Your silence feels heavier than words ever did. You may still care, but you are no longer chasing clarity the way you once did. You are no longer over-explaining everything. You are no longer waiting in emotional limbo. And that frightens them because the truth is, they relied on your patience more than they should have. They relied on your empathy. They relied on your willingness to stay soft while they stayed guarded. They assumed you would always be there, always understanding, and always waiting. They did not think you would reach the point where you quietly choose yourself, but you have. And now they feel it. What they are afraid to lose is not just you. It is the way you made them feel seen without judgment. It is the safety they felt but never admitted. It is the emotional home they did not know how to maintain. They are realizing something that comes too late for many people. Not every connection can be recreated. Not every bond can be replaced. They are asking themselves a question that echoes louder every day. Did I mess up the one connection that actually mattered? That question haunts them in quiet moments. It lingers when they try to move on. It surfaces when they compare others to you and feel the difference immediately. And that is where this urgency truly comes from. Not from manipulation, not from control, but from the realization that time is no longer on their side. They sense that if they wait longer, you will not be reachable anymore. Not physically, but emotionally. They feel the closing of a door. Not a dramatic slam, not a loud goodbye, but a soft, quiet closing, which is the most dangerous kind. Because once that door closes fully, it does not reopen easily. They want to reach out. They want to explain. They want to apologize properly, not vaguely, not defensively, and not with excuses. But fear is still fighting them. Fear says, what if it is too late? Fear says, what if they do not care anymore? Fear says, what if I expose myself and get rejected? So they hesitate. They type messages, they delete them. They rehearse conversations that never happen. And meanwhile, the urgency grows. This message is not a promise. It is a confession. They are not saying everything is fixed. They are not pretending they suddenly have all the answers. What they are admitting, even if silently, is this: I was wrong to take you for granted. I did not realize how deeply you mattered until I felt the loss. I am scared that I hurt you beyond repair. Realization often comes late, and late realization is painful because it arrives when control is already slipping away. What this means for you matters more than what it means for them. Listen carefully. This message is not telling you what to do. It is not asking you to wait. It is not demanding forgiveness. It is simply revealing the truth. You mattered more than they showed. Your absence is louder than your presence ever was. And the connection you shared was real, even if it was poorly handled. What you choose next is your power. And power does not rush just because someone else feels urgency. And here is the part most people miss. Urgency does not mean readiness. Your person feels urgency now because they are finally sitting with the consequences of who they were when it mattered. And consequences have a way of stripping illusions away. They do not ask politely. They do not wait for comfort. They arrive when distraction no longer works. Your person is in that space right now. They are replaying moments they once minimized. They are replaying conversations they thought were small, pauses they did not explain, and silences they assumed you would survive without changing. They are seeing those moments differently now, not through the lens of ego, but through the lens of loss. Because when someone begins to lose emotional access to you, memory sharpens. What once felt ordinary suddenly feels irreplaceable. They remember the way you checked in without being asked. They remember the way you noticed shifts in their mood before they said anything. They remember the way you stayed calm when they pulled away. They remember the way you tried to understand instead of accuse. And now that understanding feels heavy because they realize something painful. You were meeting them at a depth they were not prepared to sustain. Carl Jung said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." And while this is not about childhood, the truth echoes here. Your person has been living an unlived emotional life, avoiding growth, avoiding vulnerability, and avoiding the responsibility that comes with real connection. And now that avoidance has led them here, they feel exposed without having said a word. They feel seen even in your silence. That is because silence has changed. Before, silence felt like space. Now it feels like distance. Before, silence felt temporary. Now it feels final. They sense that you are no longer waiting for them to catch up. You are no longer organizing your emotional world around their uncertainty. And this is where fear takes a deeper form. Not the fear of rejection, but the fear of being irrelevant. They are afraid that you have reached a point of internal closure without announcing it. They are afraid that you did not need a dramatic ending. You did not need confrontation. You did not need answers anymore. You simply adjusted. That adjustment is terrifying to someone who relied on your emotional availability as a constant. They are realizing something else. You are not asking for perfection. You are asking for presence. You are not demanding intensity. You are asking for consistency. You are not asking them to change who they are. You are asking them to show up as who they claim to be. And now they see how many times they chose comfort over courage. They justified silence as needing space. They justified distance as self-protection. They justified avoidance as being not ready. But readiness is not something that arrives on its own. Readiness is chosen, and they did not choose it when you were offering connection freely. That realization stings because now the offer is no longer on the table in the same way. Your person feels that shift intuitively. They feel it in how you speak, in how you respond or do not, and in how you no longer explain yourself. You are no longer proving your value. And that does something to them. It destabilizes the dynamic they unconsciously relied on. They thought they had time because you stayed gentle. They thought you would wait because you cared deeply. They thought patience meant permanence. They did not understand that patience has a limit, and self-respect always arrives eventually. Here is what they are wrestling with internally. They want to reach out, but they do not want to reopen something they cannot maintain. They want to apologize, but they do not want to promise what they are not sure they can deliver. They want closeness, but they are afraid of the responsibility it brings. So they are stuck between desire and fear, between longing and avoidance, between regret and pride. This is why their energy feels unsettled. They are not at peace because peace requires alignment. And right now, their actions and their feelings are not aligned. They feel something real, but they do not trust themselves to act on it consistently, and that creates inner tension. They replay scenarios where they imagine saying the right thing, showing up differently, and being braver. But imagination is safer than reality. Reality demands follow through, and that is where fear tightens its grip. They are afraid that even if you listened, they might disappoint you again, and that fear makes them hesitate. What they do not fully realize yet is this: you are no longer waiting for words. You are watching for patterns. You are no longer moved by apologies without change. You are grounded in yourself in a way that does not need persuasion. This does not mean you do not care. It means you have matured emotionally. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You have done that work quietly. You have sat with disappointment. You have processed grief. You have allowed clarity to replace confusion. Your person is only beginning that process now. And timing matters because growth that happens after loss feels different than growth that happens within connection. They are realizing this. They know that even if they speak now, things cannot return to what they were. And that scares them because what they miss most is not the version of you they could access easily. It is the version of you that trusted them fully. And trust once altered does not reset with words. This message exists because they are standing at a threshold. Behind them is the comfort of avoidance. Ahead of them is the risk of truth. They know that if they do nothing, they may lose you completely. but they also know that reaching out means facing themselves honestly. And that is something they have avoided for a long time. What you are sensing is not confusion, it is transition. Your person is in the middle of a reckoning, and you are no longer in the middle of it with them. You have stepped slightly ahead, and that changes everything. There is a quiet truth unfolding beneath all of this, and it is one your person is only beginning to understand. Loss does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it arrives as emotional distance. Sometimes it shows up as a subtle shift in energy that cannot be argued with or explained away. Your person feels that whisper now. They feel it when they think about reaching out and realize they no longer know where they stand with you. They feel it when they imagine you moving forward without them, not out of anger, but out of clarity. They feel it when they notice that the version of you who once waited, once hoped, and once held space is no longer available in the same way. That realization unsettles them deeply because for the first time they are facing something they cannot control. They cannot delay it. They cannot soften it with charm. They cannot outrun it with distraction. They are confronting the emotional truth they avoided. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." For a long time, your person resisted the depth of what they felt for you. They resisted the responsibility of emotional presence. They resisted the vulnerability required to sustain a meaningful bond. And now all of that resistance has condensed into this moment, this urgency, and this inner pressure. They are not just afraid of losing you. They are afraid of what losing you says about them. Because deep down they know this was not bad timing. It was not fate working against them. It was not circumstance alone. It was fear. Fear of being seen fully. Fear of failing emotionally. Fear of not knowing how to hold something precious without damaging it. And now that fear has consequences, they replay moments where they could have spoken but did not. They replay moments where honesty hovered on the edge of their tongue and retreated. They replay moments where they sensed your confusion and chose silence instead of reassurance. At the time, those moments felt small. Now they feel heavy. They are beginning to understand something important. You did not pull away suddenly. You slowly adjusted to what was being offered. You met reality. You stopped filling in the gaps for them. You stopped assuming good intentions would turn into consistent behavior. You stopped sacrificing your emotional stability to maintain connection. That shift did not happen overnight. It happened quietly, deliberately, and with a lot of internal processing. And because you did not announce it, your person did not notice at first. But now they do. They notice that you do not lean in the same way. They notice that your responses carry less emotional weight. They notice that you are no longer trying to be understood at all costs. And what scares them is not your distance. It is your calm. Calm means acceptance. Calm means resolution. Calm means you are no longer fighting for something to be different. Your person is used to intensity. They are used to emotional charge. They are used to unresolved tension keeping connections alive. What they do not know how to handle is grounded clarity, because clarity does not negotiate. It simply moves forward. They are starting to realize that even if they reach out now, the power dynamic has shifted. You are no longer positioned beneath their uncertainty. You are no longer waiting to be chosen emotionally. You are standing in self-respect, and self-respect changes the rules. This is where their fear becomes more complex. They are afraid that reaching out now will expose how unprepared they still are. They are afraid that if you listen, they will not live up to the expectations they know you no longer lower. They are afraid that you see them more clearly than they see themselves. And that clarity is confronting because clarity does not argue with excuses. They want to tell you they cared all along, They want to explain their silence. They want to say they did not know how. But they are beginning to understand something painful. Understanding too late does not undo impact. Intent does not erase experience, and apologies do not restore trust unless behavior follows. They know this. That is why their hesitation is heavy. They are standing between two versions of themselves, the one who hides and stays safe, and the one who risks honesty and growth. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." They are in that pain now. They feel the discomfort of seeing themselves clearly. They feel the discomfort of recognizing missed opportunities. They feel the discomfort of knowing that even if they change, they may not get another chance with you. This is where urgency becomes internal. Not urgency to claim you, but urgency to confront themselves. They are realizing that you are not just a relationship. You are a mirror. You reflected back their capacity for depth, connection, and emotional truth. And instead of stepping into that reflection, they turned away. Now, without you present in the same way, they feel the absence of that mirror. They feel disconnected not just from you, but from themselves. And that disconnection is unsettling because it forces them to ask hard questions. Why was vulnerability so threatening? Why did they equate emotional openness with weakness? Why did they assume time would always cushion consequences? They are beginning to understand that growth delayed is not growth avoided. It simply arrives later, often with loss attached. What you are sensing right now is not longing alone, it is reckoning. Your person is waking up to the emotional cost of their patterns, and waking up is uncomfortable. They feel regret, but they also feel admiration because even from a distance, they can see that you did not collapse when they withdrew. You did not beg. You did not chase endlessly. You did not lose yourself. You adapted. You grew. You chose yourself. And that choice commands respect. Even from someone who did not show up properly, they know now that you are not someone they can approach casually. You are not available for half-truths or half-effort. That realization raises the stakes, and higher stakes demand higher integrity. This is why they are conflicted. They do not want to come back unchanged. They do not want to repeat the same harm. But they also do not know yet who they are without their defenses. So they pause, they reflect, and they struggle. And that struggle is real. But here is what matters for you. Their process does not obligate you to reopen yourself. Their realization does not require you to step backward. Their urgency does not define your worth. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You are doing that now quietly, without permission and without waiting. And whether your person rises to meet that level or not is no longer your responsibility. You are not cold, you are clear. You are not distant, you are grounded. And whatever happens next will not be determined by panic or fear. It will be determined by truth. There is something else happening beneath the surface now. Something subtle but powerful. And it has less to do with your person reaching out and more to do with what you have already outgrown. When someone delays emotional honesty for too long, the other person does not just feel hurt. They evolve, and evolution changes compatibility. Your person is beginning to sense this, even if they cannot fully articulate it yet. They feel that the version of you who once would have met them halfway, no matter what, is no longer the version standing in front of them energetically. They feel that conversations, if they were to happen now, would not sound the same. They feel that the emotional terrain has shifted. That awareness creates a deeper layer of urgency because now it is not just about losing you. It is about whether they still qualify for the version of you that exists now. They know you have gained something they cannot undo. Perspective. Perspective comes from disappointment processed, not avoided. You did not become distant out of bitterness. You became discerning out of experience. And discernment changes everything. Your person feels this when they imagine speaking to you again. They sense that you would listen calmly. They sense that you would not interrupt. They sense that you would not rush to soothe their discomfort. And that terrifies them more than anger ever could, because anger still signals attachment. Calm signals self-possession. They are realizing that the emotional power dynamic has reversed not through manipulation, but through growth. They once held the position of uncertainty. You waited, adjusted, and hoped. Now you stand steady, and they are the ones unsure. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. You have been transformed. And transformation cannot be undone to make someone else comfortable." This is where your person's internal conflict deepens. They do not want to approach you from the same place they left you. They sense that old behaviors would not be tolerated now. They sense that vague apologies would fall flat. They know you would see through them. You always did. That is part of what made you feel safe to them in the beginning. You saw truth without cruelty. You held awareness without judgment. But now awareness without self-betrayal is required, and they are not sure they can meet you there. This is why the urgency feels unresolved. They want connection without regression. They want closeness without facing all of themselves. They want reassurance without being asked to change deeply, and that tension keeps them frozen. They replay scenarios where they imagine telling you everything, how they cared more than they showed, how fear controlled their silence, and how they did not know how to show up consistently. But in those imagined conversations, they also imagine your response, not rejection, but understanding. And that is what hurts most, because understanding no longer guarantees access. Understanding does not mean availability. You can understand someone and still choose not to re-enter the same dynamic. Your person is slowly realizing this. They are realizing that you do not need an explanation to move on. You do not need validation to be whole. You do not need closure to continue living fully. That realization strips them of leverage they never consciously knew they had. They are also confronting a painful truth. You did not leave because you stopped caring. You left because caring alone was no longer enough. You needed emotional reciprocity. You needed consistency. You needed safety and expression, not silence. They thought you would always adapt. They did not understand that adaptation without reciprocation turns into self-abandonment, and you chose not to abandon yourself anymore. This is where grief enters their process. Not dramatic grief, but quiet grief. The kind that arrives when someone realizes they cannot go back. They grieve the version of you that waited. They grieve the connection as it once existed. They grieve the safety of knowing you would still be there tomorrow. And grief makes people reflective. It slows them down. It forces honesty. But grief also arrives late. And late grief does not guarantee reunion.